did the commercial real estate market crash? People ask me all the time how the pandemic affected commercial real estate. They want to know, did the pandemic cause buildings to be vacant, and are there deals everywhere? And, where are the opportunities and what's going on? This video is going to answer those questions, so stick around. Welcome to Commercial Real Estate Explained, where we help people make informed decisions about their commercial real estate. Thanks for checking in. This video is all about how did the pandemic affect the commercial real estate market. People ask me all the time, they want to know, did all these businesses, going dark cause a bunch of buildings to be vacant, and are there a lot of opportunities? Everybody wants to know what's going on, and so that's what this video is about. Firstly, if you wouldn't mind subscribing, we greatly appreciate any support. If you get some value out of this video, please hit like, comment, that would be great. We're building this channel here, putting out one video a week, so would love your support. So getting into the heart of it, to answer the question of how did the pandemic affect the commercial real estate market, the reality isn't that exciting, but it's not as big of an impact as many people expected, myself included. When this really came on, I genuinely was thinking there was going to be a massive ripple effect. You would assume that with all of these businesses being shut down, they would stop being able to pay rent, the buildings would evict them, or they would leave, and there'd be all these vacant buildings and all of these opportunities. I think that's what a lot of people expected to happen. The reality is a lot of businesses have survived. Of course, there's all sorts of terrible stories about people that lost everything in this pandemic, and that is absolutely tragic. I think there is a decent amount of that out there. The difference is, I think a lot more businesses survived than people expect. So I think the first thing to differentiate is expensive versus low cost markets. So I know a lot of people have read about how in cities like San Francisco or New York, where the rents were really high, up until this pandemic, everything was about being urban. Everybody wanted to be in the big city. That's where everyone wanted. And those rents got really, really high. So when this pandemic hit and a lot of these companies started allowing remote work, they started doing the math and realizing that they don't need nearly as much office space as they thought they did. And because the office space was so expensive, it made a lot of business sense to shed some of that square footage. So we definitely saw that in your big markets like San Francisco and New York. In more like secondary markets, I'm here in Sacramento, really the rents weren't very high before this whole thing hit. And we really didn't see a bunch of companies giving back space because the reality is the rents weren't very high in the first place compared to a lot of these other markets. So a lot of businesses really just kind of held tight. They weren't making changes, they weren't getting bigger, but they weren't just giving back office space en masse. I think everyone wanted to see how this would affect their workforce and how would it affect their bottom line. A lot of office users, some of their work is not really tied to having people come in and people, the public being in their space. And so a lot of them weren't overly impacted and have ended up keeping a lot of their office space. One interesting trend from the pandemic is the industrial market was turbocharged. Many of you probably knew that industrial warehouse was really hot before the pandemic hit. It was in high demand because more and more people were moving to e-commerce. People are buying everything through Amazon, and so all of that has to go through warehouses and be distributed out to different people's homes. So even before this pandemic hit, we were trending in the way of e-commerce, which means more and more warehouse. As you can imagine, when this thing hit, everyone was afraid to go to grocery stores or go to the department stores. Now all of a sudden, Amazon is really strong, and people like Walmart and Target are ramping up their online deliveries, and that means they need more warehouse space. So believe it or not, compared to 2019, rents and prices on industrial commercial real estate, so that's warehouses, distribution centers, that's actually up. It's been growing, it's been getting hotter, and those investments are in very, very high demand. So believe it or not, the pandemic actually helped the industrial market, and those properties are very, very high demand and very high priced compared to where they have been. Another thing that's interesting is the eviction moratorium. I think when this hit, a lot of people thought that there was going to be vacancies everywhere and a ton of buildings that don't have tenants and are boarded shut. But there was a lot of laws that were passed that basically prevented landlords from evicting their tenants. There was eviction moratoriums. There was also, the PPP that helped them pay their rent. So I think the mass closures that everyone expected never really came to fruition, outside of a couple of different industries. And so as a result of that, these buildings are still mostly filled. I think we were in a pretty good place before the pandemic hit, and, this really didn't clean all the buildings out like you'd expect. And then there'd be a bunch of vacant buildings that are, for sale for, quarters on the dollar. We just have not seen that. I think people expected it. It didn't happen. The other interesting trend is remote work. Obviously, we hit on this a little earlier, but I think a lot of people, they started working from home, and a lot of people figured out very quickly they either love working from home or they hate it. But what we're finding out is that most people aren't comfortable with 100% remote work forever. Most people have realized they like coming into the office. It's good for employee morale and for, coordinating and cooperating on things. So I think everyone thought that, everyone was going to downsize their office space. And some people work from home and, let's say they have kids or they've got dogs or all kinds of distractions at home. They realize that they can't work from home and they are, going back to their office space in droves. That's not always the case. I think some folks that work for higher tech companies that are maybe younger, don't have children, they're very comfortable remote working and they might continue to do that for a long time. But a vast majority of my clients have determined that they still need office space. Maybe it's slightly smaller than they needed because they outsourced a couple of people or they allow a few people to work remote. But most business owners I know still want their physical office space, which is obviously great for the market. So I think, there was a little bit of a quick trend towards remote work, but where it seems to have ended up is that most people are at least doing a hybrid model where they come in a couple of days a week, which still means they need office space. I think a lot of executives, they don't want to be in an open office. Like they want to have somewhere they can put their possessions. And so a lot of those folks haven't downsized. And I just don't think that we've seen companies shed office space the way that most people expected. So that's just a quick synopsis of how the pandemic has affected commercial real estate. There's obviously a lot more to it. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Of course, things are changing every day. So, as of the posting of this video, this is my outlook on how the pandemic affected commercial real estate. If you want to talk about commercial real estate investing, definitely reach out to us at Carlson O'Connell Commercial Real Estate. That's what we do. We help people buy commercial real estate. So thank you so much for checking out the video. If you got any value, please hit subscribe, leave us a like or a comment. We'd greatly appreciate your support. We're putting out one video a week, so we will see you next week.